I have a harder time getting someone to talk about a breach that happened to them versus the hacker who actually did the breach. They seem to be more willing to talk about the illegal stuff they did versus the people who actually have the egg on their face.
Today on Technado, we'll be joined by Jack Rhysider of Darknet Diaries. We're also going to talk about a supercomputer that's building more computers and incognito mode in Google Maps. That's all coming up on Technado, starting right now. Hello and welcome to Technado. I'm your host, Peter Van Rysdam, joined as always by Don Pizzette. Don, how you doing?
I am doing swell.
Believable.
With conviction.
Justin, how are you?
I am doing swole.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
We
swole.
can tell.
Yeah.
Those sleeves are working.
I'm
You're
holding water. Yeah, holding water.
Oh, your ankles.
Yeah. I'm going to need some diuretics.
Okay.
But that's all right. I'm sure that's not what we're here to talk about.
Diuretics. You're starting a religion?
Yeah. Dianetics.
We are also joined a little bit later today by Jack Rhysider, who is the host and creator of Darknet Diaries, the podcast that I'm sure you've all heard of because it's very amazing. It's kind of a true crime about things going on in the underworld of the internet and cyberspace and stuff. Go ahead. What?
The what?
Cyberspace?
The
Underworld? Underbelly?
That's it's like shadows.
Yeah,
bright web?
shadows.
Talking about the bright web, the shiny web?
Oh,
but
I
not
see what
that.
you're trying to. Yes, we're also playing Buzzword Bingo. I was like, what are you getting at, buddy?
Totally lost.
He didn't know.
I know.
And he
I didn't know
still
what you were
didn't
doing.
take the bait.
If you head over to go.itpro.tv/buzzword-bingo, you can play along with us. And I will not say the word that Justin's looking for, but I'm guessing our guest a little bit later, Jack Rhysider, might say those words. So
You never know.
stay tuned.
Shouldn't we get that right? Darknet.
Nope, Darknet is a different thing than the other one.
You could be running FTP over the Darknet.
What was that? What was that that webinar you did that everybody came to?
It sounds like you're lying already. Nobody comes to my webinars.
Yeah, I think it was the one we did about AWS. I'm pretty sure
yeah.
that was it.
Well, great segue. Thank you so much. Our first article in the news today is over at Reuters.com. Amazon lawsuit blames Trump for loss of Pentagon cloud contract. And we reported a few months back that Azure had gotten a $10 billion cloud contract from the Pentagon. And we've also, I mean, unless you've been living under a rock, you've probably heard that Donald Trump and Jeff Bezos aren't best buddies. They don't get along too much. No, they don't.
Who would have thought?
They don't. Which is one thing that unites our politicians because Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Yep, I said all the words. She doesn't like him either because Amazon.
Bezos?
Yeah.
Oh.
I mean, because they're trying to put that the Amazon headquarters too up in.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, the whole
Queens
thing
of
over
Bronx.
like he wanted tax breaks and they said no and
Yeah,
blah, blah,
so not a big fan of anybody there at or from the government, and he also owns Washington Post, right?
Yes.
Which is not a fan of Donald Trump. It's a whole, I mean, it's an amazing soap opera taking place right now. But basically, what they're saying here is that Amazon did not get that cloud contract, which a lot of people thought they were more suited for. Didn't they already have a good setup for that?
We reported on this about 6 months ago because Oracle was suing the government, saying that the U.S. military had drawn up this contract in a way that only Amazon could possibly win. So Oracle was really mad that they didn't stand a chance. And then we were all kind of shocked that Microsoft won.
Which really defeated the whole Oracle lawsuit.
I know. Well, now Amazon is suing, and they're not saying it like, wait a minute, we had them specially draw up this contract for us, but they didn't get it. And so the rumor mill is basically saying that, with Donald Trump not being happy with Amazon, they forced to pass on to the next provider and went down to Microsoft. Although I would argue that Microsoft's Azure has really come a long way in the last year, so they're all really viable platforms.
And this was a big talk at Microsoft Ignite too. From a lot of the Azure people I talked to were really excited about this contract. And I think that's the kind of thing that can help them catch up really a lot. And I will say, though, for two guys that really tried to get me to say a lot of buzzwords, you didn't even, highlight the one that I said in the headline of this article. Looking at both of your cards there.
Which was what? Oh, cloud.
I would have got that one. I would have learned.
Some of us were thinking about the news, Peter. This hard-hitting
I'm just
journalism.
saying, for as unfocused as you were.
So this is one of the
beginning.
like we focused on this one contract, but I'm pretty sure like a year and a half ago, it was not Amazon directly, but several military contractors got contracts that were a sizable portion to migrate existing DoD services to Amazon's GovCloud.
Yeah.
Anyway, so it's kind of interesting that we've heard a lot about this, but they've got a fair amount of government money already, right?
Yeah, this is $10 billion, which sounds like a lot because we're normal people.
Yeah.
But in the world of U.S. government spending, $10 billion is a very, very small amount. And, what I found interesting was that this is a military contract. And Google recently had employee revolt, basically, over some of their AI being used in artificial intelligence. Give me, guys. And being used
I don't have that.
in some of their government contracts or for the military, right? So employees were threatening to walk out. In this case, Microsoft is kind of embracing it and just saying, look, we're good with the military contracts. And in this case, they'll get $10 billion over the course of 10 years.
Yeah, I feel like Amazon has had some of that pushback from employees as well about.
I think that was the atrocious working conditions in the warehouse.
Oh, that's what. Yeah, it was about peeing in Gatorade bottles. Is what they were upset about.
Yeah,
That's
it's hard to complain about military contracts when you're peeing in a Gatorade.
It's like I didn't hear about that. I did not have a break.
And I got confused because I brought lemon lime Gatorade, and I was like, "What is up?"
Always smell your Gatorade before drinking it. Too.
Yep. Pro tip.
Yeah. Pro tip for those of you in the industry.
This is my favorite episode of Technado so far.
I thought we were going to get another buzzword right off the bat here, but that's the ad I'm looking at on the top of this page, at least on my page. Don.
Oh, we're ready.
Don uses
Oh,
ad
sorry.
blockers, so he will not be seeing. Are you using Brave today?
No, I'm using Chrome.
We did talk about the Brave browser last
and
week.
it is
from our
blocking
interview.
that ad that you're
It's
seeing.
blocking that ad.
Yeah, and per their little thing, 23 tracking pieces of code have been blocked on this site.
I am using AdGuard. It picked up 24
Oh,
things. Dun, dun,
snap.
dun.
I am using Chrome, and I have all the ads. I can't see the headline because of this
Glorious.
pop-up. Hold
And
on.
my CPU is running at 100%.
Yeah, that's
Also, I just got a Bitcoin.
look at me.
Ooh, big
All right, this article is over on zdnet.com. IBM's latest supercomputer will be used to build even more supercomputers.
Of course.
Amos.
Like Tori Amos.
If it's a little I, I'm going to say Amos.
They have an exclusive contract with Tori Amos just for this computer. In fact, she's in the computer. That's why there's only one of these.
Yeah. She just say new names for new computers.
Okay.
It's for naming other computers.
It's the
not for actually
24th most powerful supercomputer worldwide. Was recently unveiled at the Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. Its main job, to find out how to build smarter hardware to support ever more sophisticated applications of AI.
Have either of you read The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy?
I've watched the movie. I don't think I've ever read the book.
Actually, it might have been the restaurant at the end of the universe. Anyway, one of those, they built a supercomputer to find out the answer to the ultimate question.
That's Hitchhikers.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then,
42?
It says 42, and they say, well, we didn't actually know what the question was. And so then the supercomputer has to design the computer that can figure out what the question was. That's what IBM is doing. They've gone full circle. So now we will know. Deep Thought, is that what it was called in the book?
I don't remember. That was like 12.
I don't know.
I'm pretty sure it was called Deep Thought. So
Well,
either way, doesn't matter.
yeah, so
Not Amos.
this is the beginning of Skynet, right?
Assuming it
Computers
hasn't
just
already
making more
begun, have you
computers?
seen the things?
I think Skynet already exists, man.
I'm pretty sure our elected officials no longer run the country.
Sure.
So somebody has to. I'm assuming it's Skynet.
Yep.
Yeah. Congress does look like the definition of artificial intelligence, right?
Although I feel like if there was a Skynet, the last Terminator movie would have been worthwhile.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Well, would they want you
I haven't
to...
seen Dark Fate.
PR. Nobody has.
So it's fun. I know one guy, he's like, oh, it's all right.
But that's research on how to stop the machines. They don't want you to see that.
Well,
Well, unplug them.
I think Peter won. Peter won the argument. All right.
And that's why Justin was here next week, because he figured it out.
Yep. And he made $10 billion over the next 10 years.
Oh, I meant because the robots killed you immediately when you got
Man,
home.
I was going for incredible wealth, and you went for demise.
Before their batteries died.
Good.
Oh, good. Hey, no, shoot, this is an ad too. This looks like a headline.
I was so hoping you were going to read it.
Well, now I got to know. I can't see
I'll just read. I'll just read this next one. Give you guys the square here. Verizon 5G Edge, bringing processing power closer to mobile users on the world's first 5G network, is an ad for Verizon, who is not a sponsor of Technado. Probably should be.
And they're not 5G either, so it all kind of goes.
Not 5G. Yeah. Okay, but no, if I scroll down to the bottom page, how many are you blocking on this one?
Oh, hold on. I got to do it.
Is this the Engadget article?
26.
Oh, yeah, they have
26.
a ton of ads.
Okay. We're going up. We're moving up in the world. Microsoft will shut down to-do app Wunderlist on May 6th. It hopes users will make the leap to its own to-do service. Wait, so they have two to-do lists.
Microsoft acquired Wunderlist a couple of years ago, and I don't know about you guys, but I loved Wunderlist. I used the heck out of it. When Microsoft acquired it, I thought, oh, nice, they're going to throw away their crappy to-do app, and they'll just rebrand Wunderlist.
Bring together the best parts of both.
But they didn't.
No.
And so over the course of 2 years, they did absolutely nothing with Wunderlist and absolutely nothing with To-Do. And then all of a sudden, about 5 months ago, Microsoft started ramping up features in To-Do. Still not where Wunderlist was. And I think we reported on this, one of the former co-founders of Wunderlist, he came out and said, look, we sold Wunderlist to Microsoft. They're not doing anything with it. I'd like to buy it back. And Microsoft said no, but nobody knew when it was going to shut down. You just knew it was going to happen. Now they've announced it. So May 6th, in just under 6 months, they're going to shut Wunderlist down. To-Do has come a long way. It used to be terrible. It's actually really nice now. It's still not completely at Wunderlist levels. If you're used to like sharing lists, To-Do isn't as good at that. But everything else, it does pretty well.
So they buy it for intellectual property?
There was probably
Patents?
some back-end stuff or whatever they were using. Maybe some patents. It's hard to say.
Well, it's kind of like if you use the Outlook mobile app. They used to be a totally different app. It was called Acompli or Acompli. And so I used that. And then one day I was like, hey, this is Outlook now. And so they bought it and they just rebranded it and then they built features upon that.
And Sunrise Calendar too, right? Wasn't Sunrise Calendar what became the calendar in Outlook?
I'm not.
I'd heard
sure.
that. That sounds familiar.
Yeah.
So I mean, it made perfect sense. Oh, you're going to take Wunderlist and we're going to make it a Microsoft, but apparently that's not going to happen. You think the 6 months shutdown date is like a product roadmap of that's when we're going to have feature parity with Wunderlist?
Maybe.
Just like Teams and Slack. Feature parity.
Well, Teams is doing great now, but when they first launched, Teams was not at feature parity by a
being
long
sarcastic that it is
So,
now.
Peter, I can actually find files in Teams, so I'll give them that.
Yeah, because you don't get to see my GIFs that are blocking the file.
I know. That's because what I search for, I'm looking for that file that's a .zip. Did you mean this SpongeBob GIF?
I love that GIF. The one with Patrick.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very nondescript.
Whatever. All right, well, we're going to see if we can get through this next article without
all new levels of journalistic excellence.
Don exploding.
I insisted we cover this one on the show. Just for the record, if you wonder, this is my fault.
This one is from Phoronix.com. Linus rejects, quote, size of member change from Linux 5.5 kernel. So I just laughed at the headline, but didn't understand any of the words in the article. So I'm gonna lean on you two here to tell me about this member.
All right. So inside of the Linux kernel, there are a number of functions that any application can tap into, and many of them have various names and whatever. And they're kind of like macros. You have macros that are little shortcuts that you use in various programs. Well, the kernel has them too, right? There was a developer, actually an Intel developer, I think, I'm pretty sure he works for Intel, who basically took 3 macros that existed and was collapsing them into a single one. And they did different things. There were a few different functions that were being worked with here. They don't actually list them, but like size of field was one.
Yeah, I think size of field, and there's another, there's like maybe just a size of, and I think it's maybe the size of an array or something like that.
Since he was collapsing 3 different macros, he tried to come up with one name that covered them all and came up with the rather humorous size of member. So if you need to calculate the size of your member, you can actually do that with this one single macro. It was rejected in 5.4 for various reasons, but in 5.5, Linus actually came out and said, that he's still not convinced it needs to be in there. And then he says, And maybe it's the 13-year-old in me, but Sizeof member just makes me go, that's puerile. So,
well, isn't it more about the quality of the member?
not so much the size.
Yeah.
Like, are we calculating the wrong value here?
Right.
That's very possible.
We are towing the
Very
line,
possible.
boys. We are
Is it?
towing the line.
That's what I was told.
I would argue that taking 3 Sizeofs and put them under a Sizeof member could get confusing because size of field, size of member, who knows? I don't like it.
Yeah, at the end of the day, this is probably a negligible performance increase and will probably just create confusion. And then somebody will come along and say for backwards compatibility, we still need to map the old names, and it's all a big waste of time. But I got a chuckle out of it. I can't read this article without laughing. So anyhow, if you get bored, you can pull up the GitHub history where this one has been rejected for 5.5. We'll see if we get it in the future.
There's about like 8 times during that I wanted to say that's what she said, and I did not. So hats off to me,
Good
an adult.
job.
I'm proud of you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
you've really progressed.
All right, our next article is on Engadget as well. Get a free phone. Shop now. Nope, no, I'm sorry. That's the ad again. It's a new ad now. But literally, it's the entire page.
It is. Not on mine. Not
I
on
can't
mine.
even, like, the second line of the headline's cut off on my regular.
This is why Engadget doesn't normally make it into our news
Full-size
cycle.
monitor.
Yeah.
All right. Google Maps for iOS gets incognito mode. It's also easier to delete your location history on Android. So I assume 69 shares right now. This one has. I assume this is just for cheating husbands, right?
Sure.
So that your wife can't go in and see your Google Map history.
You know, unrelated, my wife was telling me a story. She was listening to...
Unrelated, yeah, not me.
This American Life, whatever.
But I was looking at the GPS locations through your car.
Well, it was a husband and wife, and they had Fitbits. They would track their history, right? So I'm immediately thinking, oh, she watched GPS, saw the husband, whatever. But, you know, the husband would go on these trips, and he would stay in a hotel, and he wasn't going anywhere crazy, but she would see an increased heart rate at certain times and use that
Never left the hotel.
to discover that he was cheating. So anyhow.
Is there a fitness center in that hotel?
So I thought this was pretty interesting because the Google Maps and Justin, before the podcast started, you mentioned this right off the bat. You thought the same thing I did. Like, okay, so it doesn't keep your history. And I've seen that history before. Like it shows where my Android devices have gone and you can map it all out in Google Maps. Is really interesting. So it doesn't keep the history, but they still know where you've gone. Like there's no privacy here, right?
Yeah, it's so they're doing some kind of geocoding necessary to plot your map. They still have to know, oh, well, somebody requested this information at this latitude and longitude on the planet.
Are they
Here's
just
what
not
they
tying
requested.
it to that user then?
It
the
seems
question
like
is-
it might be that they still have it. It's just not on your device.
When the police put out a subpoena and say, where was Don, on Wednesday, whatever, like, are they, is that data still exist?
I'm sure, right? Because if you think about how that mapping program works, so you have coordinates, you send those coordinates to Google and you say, please send me a picture of the map for that coordinate so it can render it on your phone.
Obviously knowing.
So they might throw away your coordinates, but they still have a record of like, oh yeah, we sent these images to that device to render.
Not only that, so they have several API, like their Places API. You can go, tell me all the places near this. And then if you click on a particular one, give me the information about that place. So if you look up restaurants and stuff through Google, so if they have, oh, this person requested all of these things, they have a pretty good picture of, oh, well, yeah, Justin was looking to find some good barbecue, and there he is.
And that doesn't even count all the shady crap they do, like the Bluetooth beaconing and the Wi-Fi network detection and stuff where, that's not technically a part of iOS Maps or whatever, or Google Maps. So, it's all different things that go along. But Apple is in the spotlight right now because some of the weird location data that the iPhone is collecting on its own. So I think Google is trying to get ahead of this and say, like, ooh, Apple's the bad guy. We're the good guy this time. But in reality, Google's still going to know all this information.
I feel like that woman in your story was already suspicious if she's taking the time to look at her husband's heart rate.
I would assume so.
Like that's not...
Unless they were super competitive about their fitness.
So I remember I watched an individual give a presentation about an application that they built that like combined all these IoT devices together and also had like the app had geolocation services. And he was like, look, I can turn on my fan and show you what's going on in my in our apartment. And his girlfriend was with him. And he was like turning on stuff in their apartment. I was like, like everybody's like, this is amazing. I'm like, this is weird. Come to find out, because he was like, look, I can also look at all of our family accounts and where we've been. And I was like, nah. Listen, we have real trust issues. If you're like, well, you went to McDonald's on this day.
I thought his girlfriend was going to be home in this story. And
So the visitor.
Well, her
is there an ending to this?
Her twin sister was. And he like showed, and he was like turning on the fan and like all kinds of lights and stuff.
Like, stop turning on the fan.
And she's like looking around, and then the twin sister's like, yeah, this is amazing. I'm like, he knows
like
where
that
you
movie.
are everywhere.
Paranormal Activity, right?
Yeah.
You know, you don't tell them.
No, it's just Alexa. Yeah. It's nobody. All right, let's head over now to threatpost.com. And there, I said one of the words.
Oh, yeah.
It's right in the title there. I'm going to say another one now. Ransomware attack hits data center provider CyrusOne. Report. So that's just a report.
That does seem an odd headline, doesn't it?
Yeah, just put colon
Is that
report.
the appropriate use of a colon?
Oh, let me say. I'll say it the right way. Yeah. Ransomware attack hits data center provider CyrusOne : report. So it was
It's a report on their colon?
No, it was a backdoor attack. They were able to.
CyrusOne had a colonoscopy?
Does that count as the Darknet?
Do you still need to do a colonoscopy now? Because I've seen the commercials where you crap in a box. Is that instead of a
Depends
colonoscopy?
on what kind of risk you're at.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That seems a lot better.
Yeah. How do you take that to the post
I'd like to
office?
schedule a UPS pickup.
For what?
As
You should
quickly
wear
as-
gloves.
Please come as soon as possible.
Taco Bell, baby.
It's at the front desk at the office.
I'm just thinking, what can Brown do for you?
All right. Security experts say the incident shows.
One's got a ransomware attack, right?
Yeah.
Can I read the next line of the article? Sure. Yeah. Security experts say the incident shows cybercriminals are using ransomware to hit companies where it hurts.
Where the sun don't shine. All right, well, so this one's going off the rails, but
Yep.
we have another classic example of network infrastructure being attacked or targeted by threat actors. So I'll give you the word threat there, Peter.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
So in this scenario, we've got a data center provider, CyrusOne, who has been hit by ransomware. And that's a problem because if their underlying infrastructure, they didn't really say what it was, but a lot of them are just using like Linux builds running Zen or KVM or whatever, then they've automated everything that lays on top of it, or using cPanel or other things to kind of manage deployments. So when those get hit, the clients, the customers that have virtual machines, they get taken offline. And this is a pretty big one. I think they said it affected more than 185 of the 1,000 or Fortune 1,000 customers worldwide. So actually, it would have been more people than that were affected company-wise. So pretty big deal. They did have backups, though. Apparently, they are working to restore service. And actually, by this point here on the podcast, I think they have already restored all the service for that. But it is a pretty big mess. And it's almost like another advertisement saying, if you're not working with more than one cloud provider, you really should be evaluating that. Because in this case, if they went down, your entire infrastructure might go down. The other thing on this, though, is that a lot of times when you look at cloud providers, you don't actually know where their physical infrastructure is. Like, we could make the Technado cloud service, which nobody would want to use, but and then in turn, we're just using hardware that we're renting from Rackspace or Azure or whoever. So it looks like we've kind of got our own infrastructure, but we're really just reusing somebody else's. So you got to have a good understanding of where your infrastructure is running and whether it's being properly maintained, and receiving routine inspections annually.
That is a hard thing to navigate because a lot of times these cloud providers also kind of co-locate just because of how things work. Like Northern Virginia, I'm pretty sure every cloud provider I've ever used has a Northern Virginia location. So you're like, oh, well, are they the same? Are they different? And then if you try to reduce cost by using maybe some smaller ones, who knows? Maybe they're just resellers. It's very hard to navigate.
Do you ever get not necessarily bored, but do a little research on the North Virginia you can pull up Google Maps.
It's all blurred out, isn't it?
But no, you'll actually see these massive warehouse spaces where it's labeled like Amazon Web Corporation or something like that, and there's like 8 or 9 of them, and there's more than what shows up in the AWS map. So some of them are ones that are unpublished.
Gotcha.
And then there's several other companies. So they actually do have separate data centers in a lot of cases, but they're geographically very, very close.
Yep.
So.
All right, gentlemen. Well, good job composing yourselves on that one, and try to remain composed here. For the next article from ZDNet, Snatch ransomware reboots PCs in Windows safe mode to bypass antivirus apps. Unlike most ransomware strains, the Snatch ransomware also steals files from infected networks. So that's dangerous, because if you can reboot a PC into safe mode, you've got a lot more in the BIOS and stuff, right?
When I read this one, the first thing I thought was, I'm a child.
Yeah.
And so there's that. But then the second thing was,
thank you for your honesty.
Does Windows still have safe mode? Because I thought Windows 10 didn't even have that. So I had to go and read to find out. But sure enough, it does still have a way to boot into a limited functionality mode. In the olden days, you could press F8 while booting. You can't do that anymore. But you can actually boot into a safe mode. And in that mode, antivirus is disabled. And a lot of users are not used to seeing safe mode, so they don't even know what that means. And if you have safe mode written in the corner of your screen, people feel safe. They're like, oh, well, this is a good thing, right? And meanwhile, they're being encrypted. This particular ransomware is a little bit more nasty than what we've seen because it's also exfiltrating data. A lot of ransomware will just encrypt your stuff and then demand a ransom. This one's actually sending data out, which means regardless of whether you pay the ransom or not, somebody's got your files. And so that makes this one a little more insidious than some of the ransomware that we have seen previously.
Oh, I see. Because most ransomware attacks, they're not actually taking your files. They're just encrypting them so you can't have your files.
Yeah, and so a lot of companies don't even have to report that as a breach. Like, I mean, they should, but they don't, and they're not legally held to it. Here you would.
I just think it's odd that there's a message from a user called Bullet Tooth Tony.
Oh.
Later on there. So I'm guessing Snatch is based on the movie, and Bullet Tooth Tony
that's the guy, yeah.
brought it to him. By the way, if you haven't seen Snatch,
Great film.
Yeah. It's like, why should I listen to you? Because on the side of my gun, it says
Desert Eagle .50.
And on the side of yours, it says
replica.
Should turn on the subtitles for that film.
Yes,
also.
yeah. Especially Mickey, and every once in a while, Bricktop. You're like, what is he saying?
like Dags?
Yeah, you like Degs?
Those were actually words he was saying. Look at that. And by the way, Verizon, 5G from the network more people rely on. 5G built right. All right. I assume I'm getting paid for this. I just don't know how.
You're our shill.
I'm really excited about this next article over on Yahoo Entertainment, which we normally don't spend a lot of time on, but here we go.
Apparently their website's still up.
Social media influencer, sentenced to 14 years for devising plan to steal domain name at gunpoint. That's one way to go about it. I mean, I get mad at squatters as well.
We reported on this one, it was a while ago now. I feel like it was last year, about how dumb it was. Like, if you rob somebody of a domain name, there's a total paper trail of making them transfer ownership to you, and all they have to do is go to the police, and that gets taken care of. Well, that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
And
well, even if you set up a shell company, you can just look, okay, where's that domain pointing now? Oh, this guy. He's probably the one that benefited from this.
Yep. And so in this case, we do have the follow-up here, which is he got sentenced to 14 years. So all those times where we say that, there's really no true punishment for cybercrime. In this case, there is, although I would say the actual punishment here is for the brandishing of a firearm.
I thought it was strong arm robbery.
Yeah.
It's technically armed robbery. If he's taken something of monetary value.
Well, now, did the influencer didn't?
No, he had a friend do it.
So this would be conspiracy or racketeering?
Yeah, the friend got 20 years.
Ooh.
And shot.
And shot?
Yes. It's upon entering the home, Hopkins, the friend, kicked down the bedroom door. The domain owner, who had heard him break in and tried to hide, ordered the victim to follow instructions on the demand note before pistol whipping him and holding the gun to his head. Then the victim attempted to wrestle the gun away, and subsequently he was shot in the leg, but then he managed to shoot Hopkins in the chest multiple times before calling police. And Hopkins lived to be sentenced to 20 years after being shot multiple times in the chest. So what kind of gun was this?
Well,
replica.
Yeah. Now he's going to receive, top grade health care at one of our correctional facilities.
Sure.
For all those 380 rounds in his chest.
I don't care how small the caliber is. It couldn't have felt good.
No. Trust me, I don't want to get shot ever.
But if you shoot me.
However, if I had to pick between getting shot and being stabbed, I go shot every time.
Really?
Yeah. Never see it coming. I'm talking like long distance pow.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No, long distance stabbing is what I want.
Yeah. He shot that knife out of a gun.
Is that a boomerang? What's coming? It's coming right here.
Yeah. Am I supposed to catch it? I don't know.
All right. Well, that's a good answer to a question I didn't know I had.
Shut up, Peter.
All right.
By the way, 45 things blocked on that Yahoo today.
On the Yahoo one? Oh.
Yeah, I thought you pulled that out of the web archive or something. I didn't know it was still up either.
Yeah,
so.
that's amazing. That's still a thing.
Yep.
All right. Our next.
This next article from GeoCities.
Angel Fire. Yeah, baby.
I'm logging into the bulletin board right now. And, all right. On Slate.com here, the Silicon Valley's finale's critical failure. So no spoilers here. Don't worry, folks, because I learned right before we started filming that neither Don or Justin watched Silicon Valley. Justin has seen none, and Don has seen one or two that he was told to watch. But this was a great show.
Sorry, I'm really so right under Slate. Yours says abandons all pretense of hyperrealism. Mine says a black hole of need.
Mine says a black hole of need as well.
That's a weird phrase, right?
So it's a weird tagline.
Yeah, a black hole of need. Anyway, no, I have not seen any Silicon Valley.
Well, it just came to an end, and I will say, as someone that we're in the industry, we're in the tech community. It was the most true to life show that I'd seen in terms of they were using Agile, they were saying the right things. I would look up sometimes after shows like, hey, that whole thing they just talked about how they're going to set up that firewall or something, is that right? And yeah, sure enough, it is. I mean, they were using Wi-Fi pineapples, and that's where I first heard about those and things like that. So if you have not seen it yet and you have an HBO account, definitely go back and watch it because it's a lot of fun.
I know we've had it creep up in a number of our management meetings where we'll be talking about something and one person in the meeting will say they did that in Silicon Valley, and it reminds me of The Office, right? Mm-hmm. Or not The Office, Office Space.
Oh, sure.
You see the movie Office Space, where it really was kind of telling a true story of what it was like to work in those companies.
And we were talking with some of the younger employees here that had not seen Office Space recently. I think it was you and I, and we were quoting them, and they didn't realize we're still quoting the movie now. These are I know they sound like things.
Somebody's got a case of the Mondays.
Yeah, exactly.
So Peter, what is it you say you do here?
Well, first of all, I don't want to get into that.
So sneak in the back to make sure no one sees that I'm late.
There are months of me walking over to his desk and saying, "Hey, Peter."
Yeah, exactly.
What's happening? And the
Peter,
people around the millennials that surround his desk have no idea what I'm talking about. They just, why does Don talk slow when he's talking to Peter? Is something wrong?
Why is he always saying, check out Channel 4? Yeah, but
the Diedrich Bader character just came to my mind, and I can't say any of those things.
I would put this on par with that. So I think 6 seasons, 30-minute episodes. So it's not a long binge if you
not a big commit.
Yeah, if you want to check it out, but. Yeah, I would recommend doing that. But another thing you can binge is Darknet Diaries, which I think there's 50 some odd episodes right now. About
53.
Yeah, about 45 minutes to an hour each. So that is what we're going to be talking about next. But let's take a break before we bring in Jack Rhysider of Darknet Diaries. That's coming up after this on Technado.
Will you be in or near Gainesville, Florida anytime soon? Then you should come see IT Pro TV. Make plans to visit the studios. Get a tour. Meet your favorite edutainer. See what goes on behind the scenes every day to bring the best of classroom learning to IT professionals around the world. Simply chat with the member services team on the IT Pro TV website and let us know when you'll be visiting. We'll see you soon.
All right, welcome back to Technado. We have a very special guest today joining us. We have Jack Rhysider, who is the host and creator of Darknet Diaries. Very cool podcast for those of you that have heard it, or if you haven't, we'll find out a lot about it today. So, Jack, how you doing?
Great. Oh, wow. Thanks for having me here. This is awesome.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. And for those that are watching the video now, you'll see that is not necessarily Jack. It could be. We have an artist rendering of what we believe Jack to look like, but
This is like Bigfoot.
From witness
it's
account.
exactly like Bigfoot. But yeah, you like to keep your anonymity, which I completely understand as a security professional. And is that just to kind of keep the persona up, or are you worried about like retribution from the people you're exposing on the dark
Yeah,
net?
a little bit of everything, right? I am a privacy fanatic, so I want to make sure that I'm doing best practices myself. And in the past, I have had someone, some YouTube videos I've uploaded like over a decade ago. Somebody tracked me to where I work using that OSINT and stuff like that. It's the kind of triangulation based on some of the features in the background and trees and buildings, and they figured out like where I was, and then they looked up all kinds of extra stuff. So I have kind of been freaked out before by having my face on the internet. So I kind of just do a little bit of a shroud there and see how it goes.
So you're telling me all the paranoia that I thought was a little overblown is actually valid.
Yeah, it very is valid. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I feel better about myself.
I mean, if that happened to me, I'd be like, I'm scared, I'm upset with you, but I'm also very impressed. Just based on that reason.
No, there's no impressed.
While you were being stabbed, you would think like, I'm so flattered by this moment here.
to be stabbed by this guy.
Who are you again?
So for those that have not heard the podcast before, how would you describe it? It's like a true crime. It's kind of like
It has a little bit of, it has feet in all kinds of different things. It's a bit educational, a bit newsy, a bit storytelling, a bit true crime. Basically, I was really inspired by podcasts like This American Life and Radiolab, and wanted a show that just does hacker stories, or people who have been hacked or have done a hack or some kind of been infected by one. And I was like, these are such great stories. They're high drama, sometimes the FBI is involved and that kind of thing. So I couldn't find a show that was doing that. So I made one for myself just so I could listen to it, right? And other people like it too. So yeah, I sometimes interview hackers or people who have been affected by a breach or something. And then, it's in a kind of a storytelling mode as well. So there's a little music behind it and stuff like that. And it's really fun.
So was there one specific story that led you to say, oh, I've got to go out and tell this story. It's finally time to do this podcast, or is this something you've just been working up to for a while?
Yeah, I think it was the shell shock or something like that, where like 4 years after the fact, I had learned about so much other stuff that came out, like OpenSSH forked into like Libra SSH, with then fixed a bunch of bugs, which then merged back into OpenSSH, and then OpenSSH got like $400,000 worth of extra funding from different businesses. And I'm like, where were the news cycles telling me all this? I had no idea if OpenSSH was still a problem, and it looks like it had a lot of help after this breach. So I really wanted someone to give me a story from beginning to end. Okay, here's who the hacker was, why they got in, what the bug was, the exploit, all this stuff that went through and knocked over something, and then what was the result and the end, damages done, and did anyone get arrested, and then what, let's wrap it all up in a bow, because our current, InfoSec news is kind of like, if you miss a couple days, then you might be behind and not know what's going on. So I kind of am a slow news junkie, where I want to wait until everything is done before then I start putting it all together and seeing what the story is.
That's something I was really curious about, is when a breach happens, companies have actually gotten a lot better about notifying us pretty quick, right? That, hey, a breach occurred. But details either take a long time to come out or don't come out at all. And so there's a lot of times where you hear about a huge breach like the Equifax breach, and it takes months before you get a hint on what happened, or it can even just never occur. Years later, you look back and you're like, wow, how did that breach occur? So how are you able to find that? Are you just like digging through all the various news sources, or are you starting, like, have you gained enough popularity now where you're actually getting feedback from insiders?
Well, yeah, I mean, one of the tricks I have is Google Alerts. So I have, such one is hacker sentenced. Now, if you see a news article that says this hacker was sentenced to 5 years in jail or something, well, now I have the whole story, right? I know who the hacker was, how they got arrested, what they did, who they hit, all these things. And now the final result, the verdict of, okay, well, they hit and they landed 5 years in jail. So now we can rewind. And oftentimes when I hear hacker sentenced, I've never even heard of that whole story, right? So when Google Alerts usually brings me something I've never even heard of, and it's really fascinating to then go back and say, okay, what did this guy do, and what were all the problems? So that's one big thing. And yeah, people respect the show enough that they're like, hey, I'll tell you my story, and I'm getting some very interesting stuff come to me.
Do you have difficulty getting these people to speak about it, because you're actually doing interviews with the people involved with these cases? Do you have a lot of stories that you've wanted to tell but maybe can't get people to agree to come on?
Oh yeah, definitely. The number of shoulder taps I've done and weird looks I've gotten, like, yeah, dude, like, I'll tell you my story, sure, and just like kind of laugh at me. That's just an infinite amount of those. So that happens, and I just keep tapping on shoulders, and eventually I get somebody who's like, yeah, I definitely will talk to you about it. And
So
so
this
it's a numbers game there. But when I talk to them, oftentimes I'm bringing up like the worst part of their history, like the hardest time of their life. And at first I used to feel bad asking them to like tell me about that time you were raided by the FBI, and how and what your parents thought of you at that point. Like it's hard, but at the same time, nobody may have ever sat down with that person and listened to the whole story. And so it is cathartic to a lot of these people to just, let's do the whole story, and it's all about you, and let's get it off your chest and hear everything. And there were times that were, depression was a big
so
serious
so
thing.
you're
Let's talk about that for a while. So I think people do like saying our story at the end.
Sorry, so you're putting these out about every 2 weeks, it looks like. So how many of these do you actually have kind of in the hopper that you're working on at one given time? Because these are really well put together, journalistic pieces, a lot of investigation going on. So do you have a lot of different ones that you're working on, and just when one wraps up, you're able to release that?
Yeah, I think at this point I'm working on like 10 at a time. So I'll get an interview whenever I can, and then just get that saved, and then you know work on, well, like rearrange it to when I think I might want to put that in the feed, and then start working on it when the time comes. So I've got a lot of interviews already completed, and then I'm working with some people who are interested in sharing a story, but I haven't yet interviewed them. So yeah, probably about 10. And then I'm also fostering a lot of relationships, just not quite asking people to talk, but then getting them to familiar with me and understand who I am. So there's a lot of stuff always going on at once.
So how do you decide like when an episode is done, like when it's ready to be released? Because I feel like with a lot of the stuff that you could constantly continue just digging and digging and find out more and more detail. So eventually there reaches a point where you feel there's enough information to go ahead and release. Do you have like a set of rules you follow, or it's just you feel like it's ready?
Yeah, I mean, so when I first started doing this, I tried to learn how to be a storyteller, and there's a lot of resources out there. So like for one, uh what is that? Khan Academy has combined with Pixar to create a whole course on storytelling. And it's just great. Like, it tells you about character development and story arc and twists and turns and what needs to be done. So if I can look at a hacking story and see that there's enough meat in there and length and stuff, and it has twists and turns, and there's a whole arc that kind of resolves, that we might have stories where we don't know who the hacker was at the end, and so those are unresolved, but still there's enough to say that a story has had its full arc. Then that's when I think that it's worthy for the show. And then if I can then get all the pieces together where I write it and get whatever interviews I can and stuff, and then yeah, I'll listen to it probably 10 times before I do publish it too, to just make it better and better. And eventually I'm just done with working on that episode because I put so much effort into it, and I'm just like, I can't do it anymore. It's just ready to go.
Have you had any where you've gone back like afterwards as a follow up, or you learned some new detail that you really felt you had to address?
Yeah, for sure. There's a few that I don't quite get right. I have, what I guess, a typo of the mouth where I say the wrong thing, and I do go back and I fix it. And yeah, and then a couple times there have been follow-ups where a hacker was sentenced, because maybe I just caught the story when the hacker was arrested but not quite sentenced. So I'm like, hey, I'll go back and say what the sentence was. So I do add every now and then a few extra things just to keep it a little bit better.
So tell me a little bit about your history, if you could. How you got into this. I mean, looking at your heavily redacted LinkedIn, you say you were a network security architect. So that could be kind of a lot of things. So talk about how that led you to this.
Yeah, I mean, in the 90s, I got a computer and just fell in love with the internet and have been in love ever since. So like, what, 30 years, whatever, of just loving computers. And yeah, I went to school for computers, got a bachelor's degree and computer engineering, and then couldn't get a job. And then finally got a certificate like many years later in Cisco, CCNA. And that landed me in a knock, which then got me exposed to a lot of stuff. I saw, millions of problems a day, and that took me into the security path. And so I became a Cisco CCSP, Cisco security professional. And I just kept getting certs in Cisco and Juniper and Fortinet and Palo Alto and Checkpoint, every cert that I could, just to get all the firewalls under my belt and security devices. And that was my thing, was network security engineer, and then architect eventually, and started to build a SOC at some point too, and monitoring the logs and alerts that were generated in there. And that's what I was doing for about 10 years before switching to this podcast.
And this podcast, this is full time now, right? You left the other career behind. That's awesome.
It completely. I mean, I was burnt out at work and said, okay, I just need to get out of here. And I had the podcast just starting up, and I had 1 Bitcoin. So and it was kind of at the peak of Bitcoin. So I was able to sell that 1 Bitcoin for a pretty penny, which gave me like a 3-month runway to say, okay, I can quit my job and hang out for 3 months before going back to work. And that's what I focused on, the podcast during that time. And it was able to take off and show me, potential. Like, it was earning a few bucks, and I'm like, okay, I could just, like, next month they'll earn, a few bucks more. And I think I can get through this. So it was just barely enough to get me through it without having to go back to work. And yeah, this is a full-time job now.
So do you miss anything from working in terms of keeping your skills up to date, or are there things that you're doing now in addition to, the research you're doing and the stories you're creating to keep yourself up to date on all the latest things that are going on in the hacking world?
Yeah. It takes more effort, right? I have to get off my butt and actually go do stuff, as opposed to being at work. I'd just be thrown into the fire constantly. But I was the kind of guy that built a lab while I was working, right? So I've got a whole bunch of Cisco gear and some other gear in my lab in my garage. So, and that's in the production of my house. So I do get to get in that all the time and reroute traffic and open ports and stuff whenever I'm building cool things. But yeah, I do pull up some VMs and start doing stuff, but it's always just for fun and just out of curiosity to practice. And I do get rusty on it, that's for sure.
Now, I know you've interviewed a number of people that were actually involved in certain hacks and breaches, that you've talked to the hackers themselves, which is always really cool. What about on the side of like the companies that are getting attacked? Do you find that they're willing to communicate and share information with you, or do you have to kind of rely on the court documents or whatever for their information?
Yeah, that's a good question. The companies themselves have I have a harder time getting someone to talk about a breach that happened to them versus the hacker who actually did the breach. They seem to be more willing to talk about the illegal stuff they did versus the people who actually have the egg on their face, which is really interesting, right? And I think that was kind of another reason I wanted to start the show, is to share what it's like to be breached and talk about what were your first steps, what were the right things you did, what were the wrong things you did. And we don't talk about that enough from boots on the ground perspective. We talk about it from an expert level perspective, outside the bubble, saying this is what I think they did right and this is what I think they did wrong. Well, I think it's better to actually get from the people who were there. And yeah, I have a couple episodes where people have actually experienced something, and we walk through that. But that is something I do want to focus on more, is getting more companies themselves able to talk about the breach that they experienced, because I think there's a lot of value in talking about that.
So it seems like you still like to get your hands dirty, so to speak, with your lab and house and things. But 10 interviews and 10 episodes going at any one time, that's a lot of work. From your research and your perspective, are there things that as security professionals, we're saying, hey, you should do X, Y, and Z, but you're finding from getting kind of deep in the weeds with these individuals that that's not actually right. Like, hey, you should always do, I don't know,
Change
data.
the admin password.
Yeah, change the admin password. And you're like, oh, well, actually, no, we found out a lot of times that doesn't work. Or is it just, yeah, we're doing the right things, we just don't do them very well?
Well, I think a lot. I mean, I'm not sure if something pops into my head right away on what I'm hearing as bad advice, but I think what we focus on maybe a little bit too much is some of the advice that is like if you want to have, you want to be good at something versus you want to be a pro athlete and you want to have that, half millisecond better, right? So there's a lot of progress you can make on basic things. And then there's a little progress you can make on, well, we should, do this one little, tip or something. So like the basic stuff is keeping your stuff up to date, right? If you could just always keep everything up to date, you're going to make hackers a lot, make their life a lot harder. And that's kind of the goal here, is to make it harder and harder for them. You're never going to make it completely impossible, but you want to make it so that they have to spend more energy, more time, more money, whatever it is, to get into your network, because then you may catch them or they just may give up. So, just the big wins, I think, are the things we need to be focusing on more. And the smaller things after that, it's just hard. It's hard when you're trying to secure your network to figure out what should I focus on first, and or the most important stuff. And so, a lot of security tips come out that, yeah, they're good advice, but it's just like small versus some of the other bigger things.
Well, I think this kind of ties into my question from earlier, that with a lot of companies, it's almost a catch-22, that they know that if they share how their breach occurred, that other people can learn from it and defend their networks better. But at the same time, I think a lot of them have a perceived liability. They feel like if they share, here's how we got breached, that it might make them look negligent. And so now they become, liable for those losses, or they lose their cyber insurance or something. So it's almost like I don't know, financial system or public relations or whatever has set them up to want to hide those details and not share with other people to help them secure better.
Well, would you take on a story if they said, hey, we'll go on this, but as long as you change all of our names, including our company name, and so we're not held liable like that?
Yeah, I've taken on a couple of those. In fact, there was a couple even where the person didn't want their voice on it. So we had to change the voice. And the best way to do that is to just get voice actors to read the script, or, reread the interview notes. And yeah, we've gone through that if that's what's needed. So yeah, I'm definitely up for hiding the people who don't want to be hidden.
Sure. So I mentioned to a couple people in the office that we were doing this interview this week, and found out a couple of ladies here that have a crush on you. I didn't ask any of the guys, but one of them might not be Don's wife. But my question is, what kind of feedback have you heard from other people that that are listening? If people found that it's helped them, or are people reaching out to you now with story ideas?
Oh, it's just incredible. I'm just so blown away. And to make something, artistic like, or creative like, and to have people just appreciate it, it gives me a high that's just so pure and clean that can just drive me to the moon. It's so amazing. But, some of the things I've done is reached kind of the younger audience, like the teenagers, who may not know, because they're in circles where everyone's doing this, right? And they don't know it's wrong or bad, or what kind of trouble they can get into, or that they can even do this and get paid doing it. That's the thing that kind of blows their mind. So like, well, I thought this was just for fun. I can actually go get a job, like pen testing, like, well, sign me up. Why am I screwing around doing this for free, right? So, I reach some of the younger audience, and then they get inspired to actually go do this as a career. And I think that's some of the most amazing things that I've heard from people. And just other people have told me that they've switched careers to security, and other people who aren't even close to security, like they're painters or mechanics or something, just are completely absorbed into it, because this is the topic of everyone's mind, right? You go get your haircut, and the barber's talking about hacks and stuff. Like, everyone knows about this and is interested and curious. So I try to make it reachable to everyone. At the same time, I want it to be, still informative for people like us who are in the InfoSec space and understand all this stuff.
So, it just coincidence, I guess, but my barber, this is a true story, legitimately asked me, like, Don, if you know how to do this, why don't we write ransomware and just move to Russia? And my answer was, I don't like being a criminal. And I thought it was an odd question to ask, but you are absolutely right that, your barber, everybody hears about this, and there's a lot of fear and uncertainty around it. So, thank you for creating your resource to help people learn a little more about the reality of what's going on out there and what can be done.
Yeah, and I think I was sort of inspired by a talk that I think it was Leslie Carhart and Johnny Christmas did, and they said, don't try to be, I mean, you can try to be a rock star in the InfoSec space, but it's really hard, right? There's a lot of rock stars here. Try to be a rock star, not in the info space, but about InfoSec. So like go to Comic-Con and tell them you're a pen tester and watch all their jaws drop and they're be amazed at you that you can, talk about hacking in such detail on stage. Like that is an interesting way to reach out, beyond our bubble and get to things. And that was very inspirational to me. And I'm like, well, how can I reach to people? And I thought a podcast might do that. And I think it has. So I think it's interesting to get outside our bubble as well and see what kind of impact we can make there.
Yeah, and I really appreciate that because I hear Don and Justin talk about these things in detail of what's happening each week, but I'm not in a position where I could get in and understand the code or things. But listening to episodes of your show, I'm able to actually understand it. So it's not just for hackers or people in the industry to listen to, but at the same time, people in the industry would certainly appreciate the insight and understanding that you're providing there. So for those that are at home and want to listen that have not before, what's the best way to find you?
Well, the easiest thing is to go to darknetdiaries.com. You can listen to the show right on there or find it in your podcast player, Darknet Diaries. And I'm most active on Twitter, which my name there is Jack Rhysider on Twitter.
Yep, and that's spelled Rhysider. So definitely check them out there. But Jack, thank you so much for taking the time with us today.
Well, this has been super fun. Thanks, guys.
And hopefully we're never featured on an episode of Darknet Diaries.
Yeah, I kind of want that. Like every business should have in the back of their head, let's not get on Darknet Diaries.
Yeah. Oh, we've made it. Yeah, that's how you know you've made it. Well, thank you, Jack, for taking the time today, and thank all of you for watching. But stay tuned. We've got more Technado coming up right after this.
Are you a career changer or a budding tech pro who's looking to start their career in IT? I'm Wes Bryan, and along with my fellow IT Pro TV edutainer Cherokee Boose, we've just shot a new show just for you. Each week, we'll dive into topics to help you launch your career in tech. Watch how to get started in IT on YouTube now. Just head to youtube.com/IT Pro TV to watch and look for new episodes every Saturday at 9 a.m. U.S. Eastern Time.
All right, welcome back to Technado. Thank you so much to Jack for joining us. And I assume that's what he looked like with the goatee and the glasses.
Spitting image. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, you've seen him?
Yep.
Oh, wow.
It's like watching an episode of South Park, except he's a real person.
Yep.
Yeah, we should have made the mouth move. Like a Canadian, though, where the whole hair.
Beady eyes and flappy head.
Exactly. That's it. Nailed it. So thanks to him, and definitely check out Darknet Diaries. Also, a couple other things to check out while you're on the internet. First of all, you can go over to itpro.tv/webinars. Just had a webinar on high velocity IT, leading your team in a VUCA environment with Joe Peacock. That'll be going up in the archive soon. And then I think we're doing another a follow-up to DOS, to the Desktop as a Service webinar. DAS. Because we had so many questions on that one. So we'll be doing that soon. But we also are playing IT Jeopardy with Don as your host. And Justin, you're one of the contestants. That's taking place on December 17th at 2 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time. If you want to learn more about that, if you're not a member of IT Pro TV, which you need to be to watch that, you can sign up. It is completely free, though. So you can sign up for that at go.itpro.tv/IT-Jeopardy. Head over there and you can watch that. That'll be a lot of fun. We're doing that completely live and unscripted. And do you have all the questions done yet, Don?
No.
Okay, good.
I got a lot of them done. I've actually been I've been doing testing against various employees here in the company, and
not with any of the ones that are actually on the show.
Right. Right. And I'm trying to make sure that it's going to be fun.
Yeah.
The questions will be challenging, but not impossible.
Yeah, the goal's not to stump everyone.
Right.
And the last thing we want to do is make the edutainers here look like idiots.
I know.
'Cause
They do that on
Is
their
that
own.
really the last thing we want to do? It feels like that's part of it.
I feel like
That's like
that
a
would
job
I
description.
feel like that would hurt the brand. Like, yeah, watch this idiot who didn't even know what
so
that was.
I'm trying to write developer questions for Justin, but I'm not a developer. And so I took my questions back to the dev team to bounce them off of them. And when they started getting some of what I thought were the easy ones wrong, I was like, okay, I got to do better. So
the actual developers.
Yeah.
Oh no.
So, the questions, it's hard. Like with Jeopardy, if I know what the answer is and I'm writing the question, it makes perfect sense.
Sure.
But if you don't know what the answer is, there might be 5 different
Well,
things.
especially with that reverse thing where you're answering the question.
You're actually creating
it
the
kinda
question for the
confuses.
answer.
So I've been testing them. There should just be one answer to each. It should be a lot of fun. Definitely tune in. But I mean, if you miss it, we do post it online recorded too.
Yeah.
But it'll be a lot of fun.
And like I said, that's over at go.itpro.tv/IT-Jeopardy. And once you're done watching that, you're probably going to want to say, okay, let's go ahead and sign up for this IT Pro TV thing. If you do, head over first to go.itpro.tv/Technado, and that's where you're going to get a 30% off coupon code for your account. If you have a team and you want to find out more about business plans, you can request a demo on that page as well. go.itpro.tv/Technado. All right, well, that was a lot of fun. Did you guys get bingo, by the way? Because
No.
I had a lot of stuff
Stupid
here. but
bingo.
I did.
You did.
I got bingo. Woo!
Let's see.
Breach, Bitcoin, free space, government, and 5G. Thank you so much for reading those
If
ads.
he had an ad blocker,
and
he wouldn't have won.
I know, dang it. And how did we not say dark web in this entire?
I tried to get you to say it, and then I definitely thought we were going to say it near the interview, and it did not happen.
I could have gotten it with robotic or encrypt. Which how also did we not say encrypt? I got to go back and listen to the interview again. I might.
Are you going to demand a recount?
I'm gonna.
And
I want
like,
half of your prize.
I want to revisit this game where there's no prizes.
I said encrypt in one of the ransomware articles.
Oh, I wasn't listening to you.
Yeah,
you actually
they said
did
that
say encrypt.
normally they just encrypt your files, but this one exfiltrates as well.
Bingo.
Yep. Well, there you go.
Did you get bingo with that?
did.
All right.
Bitcoin breach, free space, government encrypt. So it's basically the same Bitcoin breach.
Yeah, 5G was the only different one.
Encrypt. Okay.
My closest one needed 0 day. I don't think we ever say that.
Yeah, that one should go away.
Yeah.
I was thinking take that off and put like API on. or
But
something.
2 day.
But we did say Linux.
Linux. Well, I said Linux. Did you guys?
But he said Linux
No, I
too,
didn't. Well, I said
well, I'd
said the
still be a
Linux kernel.
blockchain away. It's
just a blockchain away.
just a blockchain away. We said Bitcoin, but no blockchain.
Yeah, we did.
Wow.
Man, I tell you.
All right,
Tough
well,
card.
thank you everyone for taking the time to join us today on another great episode, and we will be back next week. And I can't promise it'll be as good.
Yeah, I tell you, if you enjoyed the shenanigans today, definitely check out Jeopardy because that's unfiltered. Who knows what?
Yeah, it's
it might
live.
be great, or it might be like you're watching a NASCAR race.
Think of how
And
much
there's-
of this we edited out
yeah,
because it isn't live.
yeah.
That's live.
Yeah.
So check it out. What
Yeah.
can Brown do for you? All right. Thanks for joining us in this Technado, brought to you by Verizon, but not really because they didn't pay me. So we'll see you next week.